Hello and welcome back. So I need to talk about some books. Obviously this is a booktube channel, but I want to focus specifically in this video on the books that I'm not sure if I should read or not. I have a TBR. You can kind of see the beginnings of it here in the corner, and I have a kind of a virtual TBR in terms of books I would like to read or on my Amazon wish list that if I came into a load of money I would buy, or if somebody wanted to buy them me for a birthday, whatever, they would buy me. But therefore I have some books that I would like to read. However, we all have that list where we think, is that going to be as good as I hope it's going to be? Or I've read other books by that author and they've not been as good as I was hoping they would be. Or I don't know, you've heard great things, but that sort of genre is not your sort of thing. Either way, there's some controversy around whether you actually want to read them or not. So I've got some books that I have either had on my TBR for a long while and thus have been putting off for a while. Some books that I, as I said, have read a book by another author or a similar author or the same author and wasn't a big fan of. Or even books that I've started and not finished because I thought, is it worth it? And I'm like, is the rest of the series worth it? So we're going to get into those. We're going to talk about them. I might have a lot of hair on my t-shirt. I don't know how high definition this video is going to be, so you may not be able to see that. My cat just had an absolute sesh, paddling on me, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's why that happened. But let's get into this video, and I need you to help me answer. Should I be reading these books? Should I bother reading these books? So we're going to start off possibly controversially. I don't know whether this can be controversial or not, but there is an author who in the BookTok Bookstagram sphere is kind of up there in terms of one of the greatest selling human beings of books at the moment at all. And that's Sarah J Maas. Now I've read a few books by Sarah J Maas. In fact, before I was into this big reading I'm into now, I read The Throne of Glass and I read a couple of those books and was really into them, but obviously I hadn't read quite as much as I read now to grasp how good they are in terms of a tier list almost, as it were. So I really enjoyed them. I did then go on to read this series, the ACOTAR series, or I've read the first two. Now, I really didn't like the first one. So everyone said, okay, the second one's better. More stuff happens. My issues with the first one were that it was focused mainly on our female lead just being obsessed with this bloke who wasn't particularly charismatic. He was just good looking. And you think if you flipped to the reverse roles, you had a male just into a woman who had no personality because she was good looking, you think there would be a lot more controversy around it. But no, that's basically a lot of the fancy genre at the moment anyway. But leading away from that, didn't like the first book. So people said there's a lot more going on in the second book. So I said, okay, let's crack on with that. It was the same. It was just the same, but longer. There was just her with another bloke this time going on about stuff that I didn't really care about. And then a bit of plot happened at the end. And you think, okay. And unfortunately, that appears to be what's happening a lot of these female-led fantasy books at the moment. There's not a lot of actual plot going on, and there's a lot of kind of wooing and swooning after a man, and I don't really care for that. So my question to you is the third book better? Is the last book in the trilogy worth picking up? I feel like I have to read it at some point because I just can't read the first two in a trilogy and not finish the third one. Convince me I'm going to enjoy it. Convince me there's something more in this book. Convince me that it's all just plot. It's all action. There's no need for smut and romance, all this sort of stuff in there to fill the book. They are parts of the book. I'm happy for them to be parts of the book if they add to a romance or the story in any way. I don't want them in there just because they're there to fill a plot or fill an area. I don't know. I want like wars, and I want drama, and I want people dying, and I want reasons to keep reading and exciting moments in an immersive world. But I didn't really get that from the first two, so I need to know if I'm going to get that in this one. And then leading on from that, if I'm not enjoying this series, will I enjoy the House of Earth and Blood series and all of this? Because I remember this being huge as well. The third book or whatever book in this came out most recently was huge. People queuing up at midnight, which has not happened in years, but it's become a thing again because people like being in the moment again. Is this worth it? Now, in my opinion, this front cover looks better, but I do fear that it's going to be a similar thing, a kind of female-led story where they're into a guy and it's just basically her being infatuated with him and he's a little bit of a monster. And I don't know. Convince me it's better. Is this a little bit more grown up? Is this a little bit more not focused towards that kind of romance interest and not focused around that, and it's just set in a fantasy world? Is this more about the fantasy, about the plot, about things going on? Let me know. I was really kindly bought this, so I will be reading it at some point, but I just want to know, should I be focusing on it? If I didn't enjoy those, but this series has received a lot of acclaim, should I be focusing on this one instead? Let me know. Next up, we have Morning Star. Now, I have read the first 2 books in this series. If you've not heard of it, it's by Pierce Brown. It is a trilogy, I think, initially, but then it's been expanded. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I've read the first 2 books. The first one is called Red Rising, and the second one is called Golden Sun. Now, the first one, it receives a lot of acclaim. People love the idea of it. It's kind of like Hunger Games if the main character was a bloke and there was a bigger political thing going on and the world's a little bit odder and things like this. It kind of had a little bit of those vibes. It felt like the introduction to a series. It felt like the first book that Pierce Brown had written, but I like the adventure. I like the lack of, I know I've just kind of put it into a genre and likened it to something, but the lack of that. It was just kind of like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then the ending was fantastic. People then said, and Golden Sun picks up even more. Golden Sun is even better. Golden Sun is sensational. And I read it, and I felt like it felt very much like Red Rising, but just way more political. There was a lot more kind of people talking about the world and how bad it was and what things might happen, and not quite enough action. And I like my action, I like my plot, I like things to be moving along. I like to know the idea of where we're going and thus excited to read about it. I don't want to be sat in this spot where I'm just listening to people talk about nothing that substantial, about things you already know. Do you know what I mean? I know this world is horrible. I know the bad people. You don't need to be talking about them repetitively. And that kind of, I got that from Golden Sun. So Morning Star is the 3rd book, and I believe it's the final in the trilogy. I don't 100% know. I'm not even sure if it is the first in a trilogy. No, it says he has been first red, then gold. Now he must transform them all. He must become the hero his people believe he is. So is this better? Is this good? Because I have the rest of the series up there. I've just looked back on my shelf to remember the name of the 2nd book. And the 4th book, I believe it is, Dark something, is thick. So my questions are, is this book good enough for me to finish the trilogy? Similar with the ACOTAR series. Second of all, if it's that good, should I then be, or if I don't enjoy it, should I then carry on with the rest of the series? It's difficult because it's like, well, if you're somebody there sitting and you enjoyed the whole series, you can be like, yeah, 100% you're going to enjoy it. You're going to read everything. You're going to enjoy it. But just think, from a critical point of view, based on the fact I've not enjoyed the first 2 quite as much as possibly you who may has enjoyed them as much as whatever words and that sort of thing, do you think I would then go and enjoy this one? So that's my next book on this list. Morning Star by Pierce Brown. Let me know, is it worth it? Should I read it? Now, the next one is the Gunslinger series by Stephen King. Now, this is a very interesting series. I think it's considered great generally. I think it's considered fantastic. There has been an adaptation of it which has been failed. I know there is another adaptation coming, and I think that's quite far along the way. I know people enjoy it, but I think it's one of those series you have to get into. This first one's weird. Like, I've not finished it. It's only, I think, yeah, it's less than 250 pages long, and I couldn't finish it because I was like, I don't know what's going on. What is the point? What is this? Who are the characters? Who are you? Why have you died? All this sort of stuff. And I think somebody did say that he wrote kind of the first half when he was young and then wrote the second half many years later, and that's why it feels a little bit disjointed. That's why it feels a little disconnected, these sort of things. So I don't know really whether that's the issue and whether I need to force myself through this first one to enjoy the series, whether the second is good or whether the second is equally odd, but then like the 3rd or 4th get really good. I know I don't think many of them are that long, so it's not like they're a big time commitment. A lot of the other books I've questioned are because they are big time commitments. So if I'm going to sit down, listen to them and read them, then it's going to be a lot of my time taken up. But with this one, they're quite small, I think, so it wouldn't be too much. But is it worth it? I know there's like, what, 14 books in the series or something obscene like that. So I need to know, is the Gunslinger series worth it? Because at the moment I found it a little bit confusing, a little bit odd. As I said, if the 2nd one and 3rd one pick up and then the 4th and the rest of the series are brilliant, then I will give it a go. So that's my next request, as it were. My next should I read this book is Gunslinger by Stephen King. Continuing on the theme of fantasy books, actually, that I'm not sure if I should continue with, is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, I read the first book in the series, The Name of the Wind, quite some time ago, like numerous years ago, and I think I remember enjoying it. I don't think I remember it blowing my mind, but I think I remember enjoying it and appreciating the writing and things like this. The Wise Man's Fear, I have heard, is not quite as good. Now, it's a series. The first is great. The second isn't meant to be as good, but is it the same kind of level for me, who didn't think the first was phenomenal anyway? I don't know. If you've read this series or read these 2 books, because I know there's not much else going on, Patrick. But yeah, if you have read these, then do let me know. I know there's also a novella or a shorter story in this world. Is he ever going to finish the series? We don't know. It's a bit George R.R. Martin. Is he ever going to finish it? I don't know. I need to know whether it's worth cracking on with the second book, because again, it's another time commitment. We're looking at a book here that's over 900 pages long. huge. This would be a 40-hour audiobook, probably something like that. So that's going to take me at least 2 to 3 weeks to listen to that bad boy. So that's going to take up most of my month of reading. So I need to know if this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year for it to take up that amount of time for me, or at least one of my favorite fantasy books of the year. Do I also need to pick up the first one again, or get like a summary of the first one to be able to understand this, or does it just pick up kind of like, okay, we're carrying on, and I don't need to know all the events of the first one? Generally, if I pick up a second book in a series, or even a third book, and I haven't read the preceding book for a long time, then I will go ahead and get a summary of it. But yeah, I need to know, is this one worth my time, or should I just take this back to the charity shop and be happy I read the first one and not worried about the second one, and maybe only pick this up if the third one ever comes out? Let me know. So my next 2 books I don't actually have physical copies of because I've not purchased them yet, because I'm even more unsure about whether I should be picking them up. So the first one is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Now, Book Lovers is one of the books on TikTok that absolutely blew up. Emily Henry, I think, is a BookTok loved person, and I have read a book by Emily Henry. Let me find out what it was, because I've forgotten what it's called. Happy Place, that's the one I read, and I generally enjoyed it. I thought it was good. It's interesting to read a romance that wasn't too cringy. I didn't find it too kind of icky and too over the top and one-liners and cliche and all this sort of malarkey. I enjoyed the difficulties between the characters. I enjoyed kind of the sentiment and the idea that they're all kind of growing up. They're in their late 20s and they're no longer young, but they're trying to be young. Something that resonates with me as a 31-year-old, or 30-year-old at the moment, 31 soon. But generally I enjoyed it, and Book Lovers is meant to be very good as well. I got it for kind of like a chick flick. If you enjoy your rom-com sort of things on TV, where there is comedy and there's romance, which is why they're called rom-coms, and you enjoy that kind of lighthearted stuff, you'll enjoy an Emily Henry book. And I want to know if Book Lovers is like that, because I think I would enjoy it. If I just went into it with that mindset of it's meant to be easy, it's meant to be fun, it's meant to be light, then I think we'd enjoy it. Again, think of this critically. Don't think, oh yes, I loved it, I'll just tell him I loved it. Think of it, yeah, if he enjoyed the other one, Book Lovers is better. Because this I thought was fine, but not sensational. But I have heard great things about some other Emily Henry books as well, so I need to know if they're good. So let me know. And then finally, we have Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Now, this is a new book. This is a Hunger Games book. Now, I put out a video about this over on my socials the other day, asking people to tell me whether it is worth reading. I didn't know if it's worth reading. Now, I didn't read the other Hunger Games book that came out recently, the other prequel, that was then made into a film that is a bit average, apparently. I don't think that was received overly well. I think a lot of people felt like it didn't have a lot of plot, didn't have a lot of point. It felt like it was filling in things people didn't need and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, I don't know. This one follows a character we all know, follows Haymitch. It follows a lot of the story that we all kind of know as well, the Hunger Games element, the survivor, this sort of thing, the politics, all this sort of stuff. So I feel like there's more to this that I may enjoy. Now, I'll admit something, I've read the first 2 books, and I'm not sure I've ever read the third. I can't remember. It would have been a long time ago. I think we're probably talking 11, 12 years ago, possibly. Maybe a bit longer than that. No, yeah, 12, 13 years ago is when I picked these up. And so that's the last time I kind of picked up a Hunger Games book. I have quite vivid memories of the films. They're quite etched in my brain in terms of what the plot is and who the characters are, that sort of stuff. But I need to know, is it worth reading? Have you read this yet? Is it worth picking up? Does it feel like it's just a bit of a cash cow? Does it feel like it's just a filler? Is it kind of all people were interested in Haymitch in the books? Or were they actually interested in the books? Or were they more interested in him in the film because it's Woody Harrelson? Woody Harrelson's just great fun to watch sometimes. Who knows? But I need you to tell me, because I don't know, because I don't have the book and I've not read it. I think, again, this is one of those ones that it's a time commitment. Do I bother not wasting, but spending my time reading the book if it's not actually going to be any good? I need you to tell me if it's going to be any good. So that's Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, and that's my final book in this list of books. I need you to tell me if they're any good or not. So let me know down in the comments below. If you've read any of these, let me know. Again, think with your kind of critical hat on of, okay, he said he doesn't like this, he says he does like that, he might like it. But also, if you just loved it, tell me you just loved it as well, because I do like to hear people passionate about books. Other than that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit the like button. That'd be sick, mate. Comment and subscribe, of course, because subscribing is the #1 figure in all of YouTube. And just watch the video like 100 times through. That would also be great. If you reached it this far, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.